Envisioning my literacy program. First of all, what will my classroom look like? I would want my classroom to feel like a safe place for all students. I am inclined to say that I want it to be bright and vibrant with pink or yellow walls like you see on Pinterest, but realistically speaking, schools wouldn't allow me to paint it like that. And a lot of students, especially if I get a child on the autistic spectrum, would have a bit of sensory overload. So what's more important than having your classroom look like it belongs on a Pinterest board? So many things. In my opinion, having a varied book collection like they talk about in Fountas and Pinnell's book, Guiding Readers and Writers in Chapter 6 is of key importance. They talk about having books for literature study, books for reference, books for pictures, leveled books, and book series, just to name a few. I was in a classroom with a library like that, and it helped shape who I am, so I want mine to be the same. I would also employ flexible seating because I think that by giving students different places where they may sit, allows students to be more comfortable in my classroom. Organization is also key, and I would provide each desk clump with their own basket, stack, and material bucket so they could store things they use most frequently. How am I going to scaffold learning in a literacy program? Scaffolding is of key importance. I myself was a very strong reader and writer, but I know not everyone is the same. With that in mind, I would use plenty of visual aids to help my children who need scaffolding and keep them in their ZPD. For example, students who struggle with comprehension, if they gave them a graphic organizer after we just finished Because of Winn, Dixie, because of Kate DiCamillo, that discuss major plot points and characters, some children would be able to fill in the blanks. My children who need scaffolding would need an organizer that had some of those blanks already filled so they could have a better understanding of what was expected from them. For ELLs, I would create first a list of cognates and false cognates that may trip up my students when they are reading. I would provide some one-on-one discussion, or if there are enough of them, a small group instruction about the list and pre-teach the English meaning or talk to them about the mistakes they may make. How will I motivate? There are a lot of ways I want to motivate my class. Later I'll go into this more, but following the theory of operant conditioning, I would provide a lot of positive reinforcement for my children. One way would be to make a fuzzy jar. If a child does something exceptionally well, I would put a fuzzy for them in the fuzzy jar. Once the jar was filled up for the whole class, all the students would get a party. More frequently, though, I think my students may get simply worn down from school. With those students, I will empathize with them. I find that when you level with students and tell them something like, I know you're having a bad day, maybe you're tired, if you need to come back for water or take a break, that's all right. But when you come back, I need you to try your best. After this, I would make accommodations for them where I could. How am I going to employ various types of instruction? Classrooms need different types of instruction. They thrive off of it. You can't simply teach with behaviorism like I said before. Children may act better if given rewards for good behavior, but in the long run, operant conditioning won't get your students ready for the next grade. I do plan on using behaviorism because frankly I think it's a good way to get students to work with you. However, I will also be using other types of instruction. With cognition, I would teach students metacognitive thinking so that for literacy, they could check if they were not understanding or they knew what they really struggled with. For constructivism, since it focuses so much on prior knowledge or schemas that a student already has, I would do something daily that students could refer back to, like a notebook or anchor charts on the wall. I would also take care to follow and be sensitive to the student's ZPD so that they could learn best. Social constructivism, finally, is very important. We actually use it all the time, and it's been a part of all my lessons so far. I would make sure that my students sat in small groups, and I would have them do a lot of group or whole class discussion so they could learn from each other through casual or academic discourse. How will I meet diversity? There are many different types of diversity: cultural, linguistic, social, and cognitive. For the cognitive aspect, I would provide differentiated instruction such as different ways that my students could complete projects for me, whether they would like to do essays or a skit, providing the choice will appeal to different types of children who have different strengths and different knowledges. My ideal for cultural, though, I think also follows linguistic and social. I think that involving parents is very important. I once volunteered at a school where the parents came in on career day and the students would get so much more invested. I want to take that one more step further. I would send a letter home on the first day of school in English and Spanish to the parents asking them if they would like to come in and talk about themselves. If they are a mother who owns a nearby restaurant or a father who stays at home to take care of his kids, they would all be welcome. Having a stranger come in won't show the kids a very realistic model of their own life. I would ask the parents if they would like to read a story, perhaps a bilingual one that is very important to their family or culture, or if they would like to come in and teach the children a recipe from their family that is very important to them. I believe that by doing this, children will get a genuine look into other cultures that me simply lecturing them about would not provide. I will link the full letter in the description box below. How will I use assessment to inform my decisions? Classrooms need to be flexible. The needs your students have at the beginning of the year will be radically different from what they need at the end of the year. With that in mind, I will use a lot of informal assessments like anecdotal notes, learning logs, and quick writes to see how my students are doing during their literacy instructions. If I see that my students have surpassed what I expected, I would offer extra credit to those who finish early and begin to adapt my classroom library so more challenging material could be provided. In the case of the classroom layout itself, if I find my classes too overstimulating to a child, I would tone it down as much as I could without detrimenting the other students, and construct a calm down corner or a safe spot with STEM toys so the child would have a chance to take a breather and relax for a few minutes until they were ready to participate once more. My 3 research questions. For the following 3 research questions, I thought about what sort of questions would guide me to finding the ways to help my students. For the first one, what is one of the best research-based literacy practices for my classroom? Because I wanted to teach lower grades where this is especially prominent, I settled on morphology because I think it provides a setting stone for the rest of their learning. There are a few different ways, such as using foldables and matching games so the students can learn what an affix is and be able to define the meaning of it. Once the basics are down, you can teach using the PQRST model, where you give the children a word. P stands for the prefix, where they identify and define what the prefix means. QR is the queen root, where they find the root and define its meaning. Suffix is when the students find the suffix and define its meaning. And total, where the students combine the meaning of everything before being able to piece together the entire word. For my second question, what is the best way to introduce technology to foster a culturally relevant classroom? According to Dr. Karen Barrier, there are multiple ways to do this. For example, let's say your students are reading the book The Noisy Paint Box, The Colors and Sounds of Kandinsky's Abstract Art by Barb Rosenstock, the details of the life of a boy in Moscow where he discovers after finding a music box that he has synesthesia. When he sees colors is when he hears sounds. When I would read the book and then show them a video called What's It Like to Hear Colors? A VR 360-degree synesthesia experience. It would give them a chance to really put themselves in another person's shoes. As we research Russia or synesthesia, depending on my student's choice, I would provide up-to-date images and digital content so that my children could see what sort of problems were going on in Russia at the time, or what sort of things people with synesthesia might go through. Finally, to have a true VR experience, I would employ the use of Google Cardboard. It is an inexpensive way to make VR goggles that children can use to take virtual field trips. I would take them to Russia to see what sort of place that Kandinsky grew up in and expand their knowledge of other cultures. For my last research question, what are the most effective differentiated instruction strategies? According to Kathy Wesselby, there are different ways to differentiate instruction through projects, process, learning environment, and content. As I mentioned before, you can differentiate instruction through products by allowing students to choose at the end of the lesson what they want to make and show that they really know the content. Menu boards are especially good for this purpose. Since students have different ways of learning, once again, like I mentioned before, I would allow them different ways to gain more knowledge outside of my lesson. What a visual learner would need would be very different from an auditory one, so for the former, they may get audiobooks if I can provide them, and visual learners will need up-to-date pictures and textbooks to really master the content. For kinesthetic learners, I can give them a shot at doing an assignment in an interactive manner like making skits. One of the reasons I chose having a flexible classroom layout was because it needs to support groups and individual learning, which would let you differentiate the environment easier. You can also differentiate content in the lesson by providing an extra challenge for those who breeze through it, like instead of summarizing a story in a group, they could write a whole new ending to it.